Hey Heartland Online, Trevor in Carrington here. We're so glad you are joining with us today, wherever you are.
Everywhere.
I wonder where they are.
Man, they all over the world.
They all over the whole
All over the world.
He's got the whole world in his
hands, don't he?
Don't he?
Salt and light in the earth.
Hey, right
Hallelujah.
now, in the chat, Carrington, we want them to be like in the chat.
In there,
talking
already,
with us.
right
Where are
now.
you watching from? What did you have for breakfast, if you even have had breakfast, unless they're like those intermittent fasting people, which I respect those kind of people. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I ain't there yet.
Today, we got a special day because it is Forest City Worship Weekend, even here on the digital space.
Side, Forest City Worship Weekend. So y'all know it's about to be crazy.
It's about to be crazy, and he's gonna talk about that in just a second.
Yeah.
But we also conclude our For Anyone and Everyone series today.
Already, Trev?
I know, man. It's been 4 really good weeks. It's been good.
I love this series,
today, do you know that we have a special guest? Today?
I know.
Today.
You
I'm
don't
not
know.
gonna give it away. Eric will do that later. But what do we have today? Forest City Worship
Forest City
Weekend?
Worship
Talk to us.
Weekend. So y'all know that means you about to go up and worship. Because a few weeks ago, y'all were in the chat talking about your favorite worship songs, and I was like, man, I have never got to tell my favorite worship songs, man. So today, listen, today we're gonna take a look back as we move forward with a few worship songs. Let's worship together, family. So many mountains, so many ways you've made. Faithful God, you're faithful. Walking around these walls, oh, I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. I'm waiting for change to come, but knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me yet. I know the night won't last, and your word will come true. So my heart will sing your praise again. Oh, Jesus, you're still enough. Just keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again. I want y'all all to sing this with us. Yeah. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. Faithfulness. Yeah. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me. Sing it out, say, your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. Your faithfulness. Yeah. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never failed me, yeah. And you never will, you never will. Sing it out, say, God, you never will, you never will. Hey! I don't know about y'all, but I've seen God move so many mountains. That's why I'm so confident. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. Faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail. Your promise still stands. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. Your faithful. You're faithful. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me yet. And you never will, you never will. Sing that out, yeah. God, you never will, you never will. You never will, you never will. God, you never will, you never will. Yeah. Move that mountain, and I'll see victory. Move that mountain, yeah. Yeah. Move that mountain. Move that mountain. Yeah.
God of Abraham, you're the God of covenant, faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you'll do just what you say. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast. And let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Every season, God, yeah. God from age to age, though the earth may pass away, your word remains the same, yeah. Your history can prove there's nothing you can't do. You're faithful and true. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast. And let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Yeah, great is your faithfulness to from the rising sun to the setting sun. Yes, I will praise your name. Oh, great, great is your faithfulness to me. Yeah.
Oh, my soul, you know he's gonna be faithful. You know he's gonna be faithful. Sing, oh, you can just let go, 'cause he's gonna be faithful. He's gonna be faithful. I put my faith in Jesus, my
still consistent, God. Even in the waiting, when everything around me doesn't look like what you told me, God, you're still faithful. Even in the waiting, when it's cold outside, when the snow falls, when the rain comes, God, you're still good. Even in the waiting, so I will still give you all my praise, all my devotion, because you are worthy, God. Even in the waiting, I will bless your name, yeah. I will bless your name, God. I will bless your name, God. Even in the waiting, I will bless your name. Yes, I will. I will bless your name. Yes, I will. I will bless your name. Even in the waiting, I will bless your name. 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 Even in the waiting, even in the waiting, even in the waiting, I will bless you. Even in the waiting, I will bless you. Even in the waiting, I will bless you. Even in the waiting, even in the waiting, I will bless the Lord at all times, God. And His praises shall continually be in my mouth, be in my hands, be in my feet. I will bless your name. I will bless your name. I will bless your name. Great is your
faithfulness to me.
great
Is your faithfulness to
from the rising sun.
rising sun to the setting sun. I will praise your
From the rising sun.
rising sun to the setting sun. I will praise your
From the rising sun.
rising
The
sun
moment I wake,
setting
the moment I rest,
praise your
I'll praise you, cause great is your faithfulness to me.
Hey, Heartland. So good to see you. Wherever you're at, however you're joining us, maybe you're at home and you're watching on YouTube on your big screen, or maybe this is through Facebook, on your computer, either way. Here's what we want you to know. We're so glad that you continue to tune in every week with us, because here's the truth. Like, you are part of us. I know in this season, it's been real challenging because it can feel like we don't see you, but the truth is we do. You are part of this church, and we're so glad that however you're gathering this day, with your coffee or your lunch or whatever that is, with your family or by yourself, that you consider yourself part of this church, remotely part of this church. We've been thinking and praying about you, and the reality is, as we looked at this defining series that we're in, called For Anyone and Everyone, this is a series for you too. Like, to understand who we are as a church. Those that are able to gather in this season, but those of us that are at home and choose to be for whatever reason. Like, this is the series for us to understand who we want to be as a family, right? Because that's what we are. You know, we kicked off this series not too long ago with Steve Carter talking about anyone and everyone. And this reality that we want to be a culture where when people come into our building, or when we invite people into our digital campus, whatever that pathway might be, that they really do feel welcome. That they feel like we throw parties for people who walk into our space. Right? We looked at Luke chapter 15, the prodigal son, and the lost sheep and the lost coin. And Steve talked to us about being a people that are always welcoming those from the outside in, and being a people that goes out and reaches anyone and everyone. That anyone can come into our house. That we go out and we seek everyone. And then just a couple weeks ago, I talked about the power of family, and that every single one of us have a role to play in a family, because that's how families work. And that every single one of you have a divine gift. It's been bestowed on you by God to strengthen the church. Every single one of us. And it's our job to find and release that. And so we talk about anyone and everyone. we talk about empower and release, that's the kind of church we have to be, where it's not a few professional pastors. We're all pastors, that we're empowered to go out and be and strengthen the church. And then last week, Trevor taught us these last 3 words we've been wrestling with around here these days, and that's generosity and risk-taking. He told us a story about the Good Samaritan, like the epitome of stepping across a street and taking a momentous risk. When all of culture would tell you, don't do that. Don't take that risk. It costs too much. That this is the heart of generosity. You step across the street, you take a risk, and then so generously pour it into someone that they could never repay. All of these stories over the last 3 weeks, they've been building blocks for us, for all of us to understand, like, this is what we aspire to be. Like when we look at this next chapter of our church, that these are the 6 words that we hope will describe us for this next season, that we are a place for anyone and everyone, that we empower and release those that call this place home, that we are a place that is generous and willing to take risks. We want that to be our story. We want that to be what is said about us in this community and beyond. And so I'm excited because today we conclude this series. And we conclude it in a different way than we've done the previous series. Now, for some of you that are tuning in for the very first time or maybe just started journeying with us, you may not recognize the man that you're going to see in this interview with Steve and myself. But here's what you need to know. The man we're about to interview founded this whole thing. He was one of the founders. Doug and Cindy, along with Mark and Sherry Bankard, Doug and Cindy Thiesen, they founded this on an idea. What would it look like if we created a space where people, our friends who were far from God, could find him? Like that was way back in 1998. And as we journey into the next season, it just seems so appropriate to sit down and ask him a little bit about the beginning of this movement, as we look to our future, the beginning of this movement. And so I'm excited that you get to spend a little bit of time with someone who has shaped so much of my ministry. Watch this interview with my friend, Doug Thiesen. Hey, Heartland. Eric Parks, Steve Carter, and we are here with the bishop, Doug Thiesen. We really are honored that we get to sit with you. And for those of you that don't know, Doug and Cindy and Mark and Sherry Bankard were the original founders of Heartland Community Church. And tell us, Doug, give us a little backstory around how Heartland started. What was that story?
Yeah, we saw our friends drifting, and drifting away from God, and in part because just church in general, it didn't seem to be scratching an itch. Yeah. You know, it just didn't seem to be relevant. It didn't seem the teaching just didn't seem to capture where they were in life. You know. And so we were wondering, Mark and Sherry and Cindy and I sat in tumbleweeds, had dinner together, and we're just talking about, well, what would it look like if there were a different church environment? And so we set out to try and create that environment.
If you look back to, and I think this room is filled with people who are a byproduct of the vision, and this was it. You kept the main thing the main thing. It really always was like, look, we want to reach our friends for Jesus. Yeah. Whatever tools we have to use, whatever the venue, whatever the service times, you guys were always, I came up underneath you and Mark's leadership. Mm-hmm. You kept the main things, even if it was hard. Yeah. You would change service times recreationally, right?
We were always changing stuff. I mean, we're just trying to find stuff that works.
Right.
What is going to connect? What's going to provide the opportunity for the most people to experience the life-transformative love and grace and mercy of Jesus.
It's amazing, though, going back, Eric, to what you said, like, you guys used whatever you had, You used a Bible and a VHS tape.
VHS.
And the first service, I'm not kidding you, the first service we borrowed a video projector. I took the VCR out of my family room. I just unplugged it from the family room, brought it over to the School of Medicine in the auditorium, and we queued up the tape ahead of time so that all you had to do was hit play. But you know how VHS tapes, that kind of blink on. You see the little play icon would come on, and everything. It was so bad.
You sit there and you think, though, this is like for the sake of Christ, for the sake of mission, for the sake of reaching a generation of people who, for some reason, church wasn't scratching that itch, to use your language. And it's amazing because I didn't know much about Heartland, but what I came to learn about Heartland was how there was this ragtag group of people who had this idea of this model of church and VHS, Bible, Willow. It was like free R&D, because I think Willow was like, I don't think it's gonna work, but here were these people who were like, I actually think it's gonna work, and you guys went with it, and all of a sudden, I mean, Doug, I don't know if you and Cindy ever get this moment, but like, we're sitting in a satellite campus site of an amazing church based in the heart of Nashville, Cross Point. But that model came out of Rockford. And you think about, in all of these different states, all of these massive cities, all of these incredible churches, the expansion of the gospel that God used, and how he worked and whispered to you and Mark, and all you had was a Bible and a VHS and a dream to reach the next generation, and you were relentless. And I just sit back there and go, tens of millions of people. And like, for me, just to be here, and we've met 5 years ago, and I just, in the sense of thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for the ways that you've just poured into so many people who have just called this church home since the jump in 98 or in 2000, 2007. Like, you pastored them and guided them and really helped them live out the mission to find and follow Jesus. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much. Let me ask you this. You've been tuning in a little bit on right? I know you have.
Oh, yeah.
Because I get regular texts from this man, like just literally at the perfect time, encouraging text. So you've been watching what we're up to, and what do you think?
I'm a huge fan. Oh my goodness. I love what you guys are doing. Love it. I love the freshness. And the first time I heard Carrington lead worship, oh my goodness, I'm going, I cannot believe that he's leading. And Gabe, I'm so proud of Gabe stepping up the way he leads our worship ministry and leads that team, and has built a team that loves each other and loves Jesus passionately and just wants to express their heart in worship and lead other people in worship, I think it is so unique. I think the music and the worship is so unique. I mean, unique among, I've not, in a good way, I don't know of any other church in the country that's worshiping with this style and this heart. And this freshness. I think, Heartland, you guys are on to something.
So we look back with such gratefulness in our hearts. Like, as a church, we wouldn't have this moment without all of that. And yet there's a sense like that God is up to something new. Like, there is some new wine skin that needs to be acknowledged, and we stepped toward that. And we wanted to have the bishop here with us as we tell you, you're the first to know this, and you are Heartland family. We've been prayerfully considering over the last several months, really probably longer than that, like what does this next season look like, and how do we continue much of what God has placed on you and Mark and Sherry and Cindy's heart 20 some years ago. because we do want to carry that legacy forward. And yet we also know that there's a whole generation that needs to know Jesus. And just as we changed in 1998 to capture a generation, so too we'll have to do again. And we're on that journey of going, what does that look like? So, Heartland, this will be the last time that I refer to you as Heartland, because on May 2nd, I guess it won't be the last time, but pretty close, family. On May 2nd, we're changing the name of our church. We're going to be known as Forest City Church. And this campus will be known as the Rockford campus. Now, there's a second piece to the story, but before I let Steve tell you a little bit about why we're calling it the Rockford campus, I want to let you know that Forest City Church, the reason why we picked this name for this next iteration for us is Steve did a talk early on. Well, one, you know that we're known as the Forest City. So all of you folks that grew up in Rockford, you're like, well, yeah, we know that. But Steve did a talk early on, like when I first came in to lead about the redwoods and this idea of being interconnected and how those redwoods underneath the ground connect together. And it was such a perfect metaphor of what we hope to be, how we hope to be connected, that it just made sense that in this next season, we would be known as that, Forest City Church. And we're so excited. We wanted you to know first, and we wanted you to know so that you could brace yourself, but we're inviting you with us, like to come with us in this next journey, to help us reach an entire generation of people who are far from God, just like you set out to do. We're doing it again, and we want you to come with us. And it's exciting because Forest City Church isn't just about Rockford. When we talk about the Forest, we're already thinking beyond. So, Steve, talk a little bit about what we're doing in the northwest suburbs.
Yeah, so every time I'm in Rockford, I feel like I keep hearing people say, man, there's something happening, something stirring. And you even just alluded to it, just tuning in from Nashville, and I have friends in the Chicagoland area that just go, man, I feel like something is happening, and so we want to let you know that there's a group of people who are going to be starting Forest City Elgin, and we're actually going to be there and set up shop, and there's going to be live teaching and live worship, but there's going to be the same ethos, the same mission, the same spirit that began in 1998 is going to be continuing into the city of Elgin and hopefully beyond. And so we're thrilled. We're so excited. So look forward to that beginning sometime in the fall of this year.
Now we know, look, change isn't easy. Like I love Heartland Community Church. I love it. It is a big part of my story, a massive part of my family's story. And so we know that change can be hard when we step in these spaces. I wonder, maybe from both of your perspectives, when we talk about change and we talk about a moment like this, how do we walk into it without pretending that it isn't hard, but knowing that this next step, this is the step we need to take as we move into our future? What comes to mind when we talk about that?
Yeah, well, you talked about new wine and new wineskins. I was just reading that the other day in my devotional, how Jesus taught that out, and that was the sense that we had when we started Heartland. Was that okay? This is new wine and a new wineskin. We need to think through how we do everything. So we had long conversations. Are we going to have offering bags, or offering plates, or offering buckets, or offering baskets, or are we going to put a box on the wall? We talked through everything that the church does, and how do we feel like God is leading us to go about engaging in that in the life of the church. You guys were around, I think probably, you were there when my last Sunday, my last weekend with you. And one of the things I told you was that in order for the church to reach the next generation, you're going to have to do things differently. You cannot continue to do ministry the way we've always done it if we're going to reach the next generation. What's difficult about that is that what we've done in the past changed your heart, and it deeply impacted you. And so there is something about Heartland that resonates deeply with you because of your experience, because that's where you met Jesus. That's where your heart was transformed. These were the songs we sang, and this is the way we went about doing ministry when my heart was changed and when my life came alive in Jesus Christ. But now we have the opportunity to say, okay, but how can I set that aside so that this next generation will grow up and have that same experience and encounter Jesus in an authentic, meaningful way? And that's going to be a different language, different musical language. It's going to be a different teaching language. I don't know what that means for building style and all of that. The Elgin campus is probably going to look different than the Rockford campus, just because of a different style of ministry, a different container that's going to be necessary in order to minister more effectively.
That's really, really good. A few years ago, I had the privilege to spend some time with Carly Fiorina, and she ran for president in 2016. And I had the chance, like they said, did a Q&A, and they're like, anyone have questions? And I was dumb enough to raise my hand. And so I raised my hand. I was like, hey, I had a question. When change is happening, in the business sector, in the church, in political landscapes, like, what does a leader have to realize and know? And I'll never forget what she said. She said these words. She said, it doesn't matter how spiritually deep someone is. It doesn't matter how emotionally intelligent someone is. It doesn't matter where someone went to college and is the best trained in the world at their craft. When change happens, the first response for every single human is, what does it mean for me? Mm-hmm. And every leader's got to have that. And you just spoke to that. Because what you think, for many of you, you're thinking right now, what does this mean for me? This place shaped and formed me. What does this mean for me? But the beautiful piece is, since the beginning of Heartland, it's been keep the main thing the main thing. It's about Jesus and what was in ink. And the truth is, we're keeping the same stuff in ink. Like Eric and I and others, this is going to be the thing that we preach day in and day out. And the worship, it's always had this spirit, this fresh spirit to draw the masses in, to sing, to cry out with desperation. That's never changing. That's not changing. And yet the pencil, the style. So in moments when you start to feel like, oh my goodness, everything's changing, ask yourself, is what's changing in ink, or is what is changing in pencil? And I think how you clearly identify that helps me, because I go, oh, the stuff that's in ink that's been since 1998, it's still in ink. The same heartbeat, the same ethos, the same style, the same desire to reach Rockford and beyond, the same desire to be others focused, the same desire to keep the main thing, or even some would say, keep the remain thing the main thing, because we want to remain, abide, abode, make our home in Christ. And this is what we are going to be about in Rockford, in Elgin, continuing online. And there is going to be parts that are in pencil. There's going to be parts that, oh my goodness, there's a keyboardist that I don't even know what keys are being played right now. And that's different than what I grew up in. And yet I'm going, thanks be to God that like his body is so broad and expansive. Thanks be to God that the church, the mosaic is so wide. And when we say anyone and everyone, we want to mean it, because that's how God's heart was for. Anyone and everyone. So I'm hoping you join us. I'm so fired up. Like I think like it's so great because we get to stand on the shoulders of, two people that I just think the world of, and what you've given to this place. So thank you.
Yeah. Let me say how grateful we are for every one of you, because so many of you, you really have sacrificed. God has changed your life and you've stepped in, and we are inviting you as family to re-up on this journey, to go with us, to continue in what Doug and Mark and Sherry and Cindy set out to do, and it's reach our neighbors for Jesus. That's what we're going to do. That's our plan. That's what we're up to. And I'm crazy grateful for you. I'm crazy grateful for Cindy. I'm really grateful for Mark and Sherry Bankert and the vision that you guys had. And we are excited about the future. And family, we're asking you to go with us. Will you go with us and help us continue in the mission that was started at Tumbleweeds? We just re-up and we say, for this next run, we're going to see more and more people come to Jesus, and we'll do it together. So thanks for being a part of the family meeting. Thanks, Doug. Thanks for
You're welcome.
kicking it with us.
You're welcome. This is
always
fun.
nice. It's always nice to be around the bishop. So that's good. Thanks, man.
I want to share with you 3 stories throughout the scriptures that detail the power of a name change. The first one we discover in Genesis 32. This guy by the name of Jacob, every time we know in scripture that his name, he's being asked, what is your name? You know what he says? He says Esau. He lies. He pretends. He tries to be somebody else. But in Genesis 32, he's on the verge to actually reconcile with his older brother. And he finds himself late at night in a wrestling match with an angel. And this angel's like fighting him, and literally he's like, what is your name? What is your name? And for the first time ever in scripture, Jacob says, my name is Jacob. And the angel says, no, your name now is Israel, which means to struggle with God and with man and overcome. From that moment on, Jacob, Israel, walks with a limp, and he reconciles with his brother. The second story we have of a power of a name change comes in Matthew 16. One of Jesus' disciples, one of his Talmudim, was a man by the name of Simon. And Jesus takes Simon and the rest of the disciples on this hike. And as they're hiking, he goes, hey, who do people say that I am? And people start throwing out different names. Some people say you're like a prophet. Some people think you're like John the Baptist. And then Simon says, I know who you are. Because Jesus looks at him and goes, who do you say I am? And Simon says, you're Jesus. You're the Son of the living God. And it's in this moment where Jesus had taken his disciples to a place called Caesarea Philippi, this very, very pagan city. No Jewish boy would have ever gone here. And in this city, once every other year, 250,000 people would gather for some profoundly dark and broken practices. And Jesus takes his disciples here, and in this moment, he tells Simon, he goes, no, you know what? You will no longer be Simon. Your name will now be Peter. In Greek, it's the word Cephas, which literally means rock. And then he says, on this rock, I'm going to build my church. And most people think, oh, he's talking about Peter, but he's really pointing to a massive rock where all of this pagan activity happened, and said, on this rock, in the middle of culture, I'm literally going to build my church. And so he names and renames Simon to be Rocky, because he wants Peter to always remember that this story of good news, the gospel, is supposed to be built in the places that feel the most darkest and broken. The third story comes from Acts chapter 13. And we know this man named Saul. Saul had come to Christ. He was a persecutor. He was a murderer. He was a violent, violent man. He comes to Christ, and he has this moment where he's literally going out, and he's beginning to kind of share this message of grace and redemption, what had rescued him. And he finds himself in a conversation with this proconsul. His name is Sergius Paulus. And he literally leads Sergius Paulus to faith. And Saul, we learn in Acts 13, becomes known as Paul. It's like he literally takes on the name of his first person he led to faith. Oh, who is the first person you led to faith? Can you imagine if you just took on their name? And it's literally, Saul had like these Jewish roots, but he takes on this name Paul, which reminded Paul and the people that this story was going out to a Gentile audience. And so Saul, being really, really aware of the people that God had entrusted him to reach, takes on the name of someone who he had the privilege to lead to Christ. 3 stories in a matter of a few minutes, straight from the scriptures, to detail the power of a name change. One was a man named Jacob who, never actually owned up to who he truly was. And when he finally did, God gave him a new name and said, your name is going to be one that represents what it means to struggle with me and struggle with others and overcome. The second one was a reminder of what Jesus wanted to do, which was to build his church in the broken and darkest places of culture. And the third one, Saul becomes Paul, because he takes on the name of the person he's trying to reach and takes on the name, a name that's actually going to be more conducive to reach the masses of a new audience. And friends, I found myself talking with Eric one night, and I just said, I feel like this is where we're headed. There's moments in all of us where we've drifted. And we just heard from Eric just some of the stories of what God wants to do, and what we've heard from Doug Thiesen, like the heartbeat of why this church began. And I think we're going to be walking into the future as Forest City Church in a wildly more humble way, and experience God actually doing something as Forest City Church. But I also think that for us, we don't want this to just be here in Rockford, but to see what God wants to do beyond. And how we're going to actually go into places, and we know God's already there, but we're going to partner with God, and we're actually going to get to join with him in what he longs to see happen, where grace and redemption takes over. And I think we're never going to lose sight of this book, the story of grace, the Holy Spirit, the love of God, and God's love for people. Because this has always, ever, only been about people. And just like Saul became Paul to reach, it's like Heartland's becoming Forest City to reach more and more and more people. And friends, I'm hoping you'll join us. I think it's going to be an exciting, momentous opportunity here in Rockford and Elgin, online. There's going to be opportunities for you to join with us in worship, to join with us in practice, to join with us live, to join with us in getting the word out, to join with us and being people who limp, and be people who aren't afraid of the darkest places, and being people who want to do whatever it takes to reach our friends and people who are in need of the power of grace and peace. I hope you'll join us on this ride called Forest City Church.
and see that the Lord is good.
He's so kind.
Taste and see that the Lord is good.
If you haven't, you will. If you haven't, you will.
Taste and see that the Lord is good.
If you haven't, you will. If you haven't, you will.
Taste and see that the Lord is good.
If you haven't, you will. If you haven't, you will.
Taste and see that the Lord is good.
If you haven't, you will. If you haven't, you will.
Taste and see that the Lord is good.
If you haven't, you will. If you haven't, you will.
Taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste and see that the Lord is good.
If you haven't, you will. If you haven't, you will.
Taste and see that the Lord is good.
Always good. Always good. Always good. Always good. Always good.
Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears.
Yes, it is now.
It's like holy water on my skin.
Hey, thank you so much for joining with us today. Today, as you heard, was a historical day in our church, in your church. And here's what we want to do. Right now, a QR code is going to come up on the screen. We want you to pull out your phone, and what you need to do is pull out the camera app, take a picture of it, or just zoom in on it, and then a website's going to come up. Click that website, fill out that form. Here's the reason why we're doing this, because we want to send you some free Forest City Church merch. It's exclusive just for you right now. As our online campus, we want to get this to you as soon as we can. So you got to fill out that form, and you get some free Forest City Church merch, which is like, that's the best thing, until like Christmas time. So do that for us. And again, we're so grateful as our online digital campus for continuing to be a part of all the things that God is doing here. And we're so grateful for you. If you would like to continue to be a part, you can always give. And here's what you need to do. You can text Forest City, 2 words. Forest City is a new keyword, to 77977 as we continue to do all the things that we're doing here and reach you, your friends, your family, and everyone who's calling themselves a part of Forest City Church moving forward. We love you so much. We are so grateful for you. Next week is Mother's Day. You're going to want to stay tuned for that to celebrate all the moms. We love you, Forest City Church. We'll see you next week. Bye.